Lena sat near the bus stop with her coat pulled tight around her body. The wind moved through the street like it had a job to do. It pushed paper cups and old flyers across the sidewalk. Cars passed in a steady line, and people walked fast with their heads down. Most of them did not look at Lena. A few looked for 1 second and then looked away, like her face made them uncomfortable. Lena had learned that the hardest part of being out in the open was feeling invisible. She had been living without a home for months. Some nights she found a corner that felt safer. Some nights she slept lightly, waking up at every loud sound. She kept her small bag close to her chest, because that bag carried everything that still belonged to her. Inside it were socks, a worn scarf, a small bottle of water, and a folded photo that she did not show anyone. On bad days, she touched the photo to remind herself that her life once had warm rooms and quiet dinners. On good days, she tried not to think about the past too much. That morning, the cold felt sharper than usual. Lena checked her pocket and counted her money carefully. $8. She counted it twice to be sure. $8 was not much, but it could buy a small sandwich and a hot tea. That would keep her going for a few hours. She had learned to plan her day around small wins like that. Food, warmth, and a place to sit for a little while. Those things were like gold. Lena stood up slowly. Her knees ached, but she forced herself to move. She walked along the street looking for something cheap. She passed a bakery where the smell of bread made her stomach twist. She passed a shop window where a family was laughing inside, holding shopping bags and cups of coffee. Lena kept walking. She did not want to stand and watch. Watching made the hunger feel worse. Across the road, she noticed a man sitting on the curb near a broken fence. He was large and broad, wearing a heavy black jacket. The jacket had patches on it, stitched with care. A motorcycle helmet sat beside him. His boots looked tough, and his hands looked like they had done hard work. People nearby avoided him. Some moved to the other side of the sidewalk. A few looked nervous. A few whispered. Lena understood why. A man dressed like that often came with a story people feared. But Lena noticed something else. The man's shoulders were slumped, not proud. His face was pale under the shadow of his hood. His breathing looked slow and strained. He was not acting loud. He was not looking for trouble. He looked like someone fighting to stay awake. Lena stopped walking. Her mind gave her a warning. Stay away. That was the street rule. That was the safe rule. Lena had followed that rule many times, because she could not afford mistakes. She had no one to call if things went wrong. She had no room to hide in. She had no lock on any door. Still, she stood there and watched him from a short distance. The man shifted his weight and pressed a hand against his stomach like it hurt. He swallowed hard and looked down at the ground. He did not look at the people passing him. It was like he had accepted that nobody wanted to see him. Lena's heart tightened. She knew that feeling too well. The feeling of being judged before you even speak. The feeling of being treated like your pain is something other people do not want to touch. She crossed the street carefully, watching for cars. She walked toward the man with steady steps, even though her chest felt tight. When she got close, he looked up quickly, surprised. His eyes were tired, but they were not cruel. They were sharp in a quiet way, like he had learned to observe the world closely. "What do you want?" he asked. His voice was rough, but not angry. Lena kept her distance. She did not move too close. She held her hands where he could see them. "Are you okay?" she asked. The man let out a slow breath. "No," he said. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he hesitated. Then he spoke again. "I haven't eaten in 2 days." Lena stared at him for a moment. 2 days. That was serious. Lena had gone a day without food before, and she remembered how her body started to feel weak and shaky. She remembered how even standing felt hard. She remembered how her thoughts got slower and darker. The man tried to sit up straighter, but his body did not cooperate. He looked embarrassed for a second. Lena noticed that too. Pride was a heavy thing. Some people would rather suffer than admit they need help. Lena felt the $8 in her pocket like a stone. She had planned every bite of food in her head already. If she gave her money away, her stomach would stay empty. The cold would feel worse. She could end up weak by evening. Lena knew all the risks, and that knowledge tried to pull her backward. Then she looked at the man again. He was wearing a jacket that made people fear him, but hunger did not care about patches or reputation. Hunger treated everyone the same. Lena made a decision before fear could stop her. "Wait here," she said. The man blinked. "Why?" Lena did not answer. She turned and walked toward the diner she had seen at the corner. It was not a fancy place. It had plain tables and bright lights. It smelled like fried food and warm bread. Lena walked inside and felt every eye turn toward her. She knew how she looked. Her coat was old. Her hair was messy. Her shoes were worn. She could feel judgment hanging in the air, quiet but heavy. She stepped up to the counter and spoke softly. "2 sandwiches and 2 teas, she said. The worker looked surprised. Then the worker nodded and started preparing the order. Lena stared at the menu while she waited, even though she could not afford anything else. When the food was ready, Lena placed her $8 on the counter. Her fingers trembled as she let go of the last money she had. She carried the bag outside, holding it close like it mattered. She walked back across the street. The man was still there, sitting in the same spot. He looked at her with confusion as she approached. Lena held out the bag. "Here," she said. The man stared at the food. He stared at the cups. He looked up at Lena again, like he was trying to understand if this was real. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Lena shrugged lightly, but her eyes were serious. "I know," she said. "But you needed it." For a second, the man did not move. Then he took the bag with careful hands, like it was something fragile. He opened it and took a bite. His eyes closed for a short moment, and Lena could see the relief wash over him. He ate slowly, not like someone greedy, but like someone who knew every bite mattered. Lena stood there quietly. She watched his hands stop shaking. She watched his shoulders rise a little, as if food gave him enough strength to hold himself up again. When he finished half the sandwich, he paused and looked at her. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she said. He nodded once. "Mine is Ray," he said. "And I'm not going to forget this." Lena gave a small smile. "You don't have to remember," she said. "Just get better." Ray looked down at the helmet beside him. He picked it up and held it on his lap. "I got separated from my group," he said. "Bad night, bad luck. I thought I could handle it alone." Lena understood that too. People often thought they could carry everything alone until the weight became too heavy. Ray finished the rest of the sandwich. He took a sip of tea and exhaled slowly. Then he stood up carefully, testing his balance. He was tall, and even weak, he looked strong. But Lena could tell he was still not fully okay. Ray reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something small. A card. He held it out to her. "If you ever need help," he said, "you come to this address." Lena stared at the card. It had a name and a location. She did not know what to say. She did not trust easily, because trust had hurt her before. But she also did not want to insult him. "I don't know," Lena said softly. Ray nodded like he expected that answer. "You don't have to trust me today," he said. "Just keep it." Lena took the card and slipped it into her bag. Ray lifted his helmet and looked at the street like he was listening for something far away. For a moment, Lena heard nothing but traffic. Then, faintly, she thought she heard a deep engine sound somewhere in the distance. Ray's face changed. Not fear. Not anger. Something else. Relief. Lena did not understand why, but she felt it too, like something big was approaching. Ray looked at her again. You did something most people wouldn't, he said. And people like me don't forget that. Lena opened her mouth to reply, but before she could speak, the engine sound grew louder. It was not one engine. It sounded like many. Lena turned her head toward the far end of the street, and her breath caught, because the sound was coming closer, fast, like a storm made of machines. And that was when Lena realized her small choice with $8 might be the beginning of something she never expected. The sound of engines rolled through the street like heavy wind. Lena stood still, her hands gripping the strap of her small bag. The noise grew louder with every second. People nearby began to slow down. Some stopped walking. Others turned their heads, trying to see what was coming. Lena felt a tight feeling in her chest. She had lived on the street long enough to know that attention often meant trouble. Ray stood straighter now. His tired posture changed. He placed the helmet on his head and secured it with steady hands. The weakness Lena had seen earlier was fading. Not fully gone, but covered by something stronger. Purpose. You should move back a little, Ray said calmly. This might get crowded. Lena took a few steps away, staying near the bus stop. She watched the far end of the road as the first motorcycle appeared. Then another. Then another. The engines were loud but controlled, not wild. The riders moved in a line, their bikes shining under the daylight. Black jackets. Patches. Calm faces behind visors. People stepped aside quickly. Some looked scared. Some pulled out phones. Lena felt small standing there with her worn coat and empty pockets. She wondered if she had made a mistake. She wondered if helping Ray had brought danger to her instead of kindness. The motorcycles slowed and came to a stop near Ray. One by one, more bikes arrived until the street was filled with them. The noise settled into a deep hum. The riders parked carefully, moving with discipline. There was no shouting. No chaos. Just presence. One man stepped off his bike and walked toward Ray. He was older, with gray at the sides of his beard. He removed his helmet and looked Ray in the eyes. "We've been looking for you," he said. Ray nodded. "I know. I messed up." The man shook his head slightly. "You scared us," he replied. Then he placed a hand on Ray's shoulder. "You okay now?" Ray glanced at Lena before answering. "I am," he said. "Thanks to her." The man followed Ray's gaze. He turned and looked at Lena standing near the bus stop. His eyes were serious but curious. He studied her like he was trying to understand something important. "You helped him?" the man asked. Lena felt her throat go dry. She nodded slowly. "He was hungry," she said. "So I got him food." The man looked surprised. He glanced at the empty food bag near Ray's feet. Then he looked back at Lena. "You didn't know who he was," he said. Lena shook her head. "I didn't need to know." For a moment, the man said nothing. Then he nodded once, deep and respectful. He turned back toward the group and raised his hand slightly. That small motion made several riders look his way. "She helped one of ours when he had nothing," the man said loud enough for those nearby to hear. "That matters." Lena felt dozens of eyes turn toward her. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to blend into the sidewalk. She was not used to being seen like this. Not by anyone. Ray walked over to her slowly. "This is my family," he said quietly. "They ride together. They watch out for each other." Lena nodded, unsure what to say. The older man stepped closer. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena," she replied. "I'm Sam," he said. "And I want to thank you." "You don't have to," Lena said quickly. "I just did what felt right." Sam smiled faintly. "That's exactly why it matters." One of the riders walked over holding a paper bag and a warm drink. He handed it to Lena gently. "You look like you could use this," he said. Lena hesitated. Accepting help was not easy for her. It made her feel weak, like she was losing control. But her hands were cold, and her stomach was empty now. She nodded and took the bag. "Thank you," she said softly. She took a small bite and felt warmth spread through her body. She had forgotten how good it felt to eat without rushing. To drink something warm without worrying it would be her last. The group did not stay long on the street. Sam spoke with Ray quietly, checking on him. Another rider brought Ray water. Someone else adjusted his bike. Everything felt organized, calm, and respectful. Lena watched them and realized these people were not what the stories always made them out to be. They were loud machines and strong jackets, yes. But they were also careful and loyal. Sam approached Lena again. "Do you have a place to stay tonight?" he asked. Lena hesitated. "Sometimes," she said honestly. Sam nodded like he understood the answer behind her words. "Ray mentioned he gave you a card," he said. "That offer stands." Lena touched her bag where the card was hidden. "I don't like asking for help," she said. Sam smiled gently. "Neither do we," he replied. "But knowing when to accept it is also strength." Ray walked up beside them. "You saved me today," he said to Lena. "Not just with food. You reminded me what kindness looks like." Lena shook her head. "I just didn't want you to suffer." Ray smiled. "That's more than most people give." The riders began preparing to leave. Helmets went back on. Engines started again, filling the air with sound. Before getting on his bike, Ray turned to Lena once more. "We ride out of town today," he said. "But we'll be back." Lena felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Part of her was glad the noise would leave. Part of her felt like something meaningful was slipping away. Ray reached into his jacket and handed her a small folded paper. "This is a shelter run by friends," he said. "Safe place. Hot food. Tell them Ray sent you." Lena took it carefully. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the feeling away. "Thank you," she whispered. Ray nodded and put on his helmet. The group rolled out together, one by one, leaving the street quieter than before. The last bike disappeared around the corner, and the world seemed to return to normal. People slowly went back to their routines. The bus arrived and left. The bakery door opened and closed. The city kept moving. Lena sat back down at the bus stop with her food bag and warm drink. Her hands no longer shook. Her stomach was full for the first time that day. She stared at the folded paper and the card in her bag. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if things would really change. But for the first time in a long while, Lena felt something new settle inside her chest. Hope. And somewhere far away, engines carried her kindness with them, spreading her name into places she had never been. What Lena did not know was that the next time those engines returned, they would not stop on the street. They would stop at her door. 2 days passed after the motorcycles left the street. Lena followed the directions Ray had given her. The shelter was in an old brick building near the edge of town. It was not fancy, but it was clean and warm. The people there did not ask too many questions. They gave her a bed, a hot meal, and time to rest. For Lena, that felt like a gift she was not used to receiving. That night, Lena slept deeply. Her body finally relaxed. She did not wake up at every sound. When morning came, sunlight slipped through the small window near her bed. Lena sat up slowly and breathed in. The air smelled like coffee and fresh bread. It felt strange to wake up somewhere safe. Over the next few days, Lena helped around the shelter. She cleaned tables, folded blankets, and served food. No one treated her like a burden. No one rushed her. One woman named Nora spoke kindly to her and showed her where everything was. Another man named Paul asked Lena if she had ever thought about finding work again. Lena did not know how to answer that question. Work felt like something from another life. Still, the idea stayed in her mind. Every night, Lena touched the card Ray had given her. She did not call the number. She was not ready. She did not want to feel like she owed anyone anything. But she also did not forget the way Ray and the others had looked at her with respect. On the fourth morning, the shelter was quieter than usual. Lena was sweeping near the front door when she heard a familiar sound. A low engine. Then another. Then many. Her heart skipped. She stopped sweeping and walked toward the door slowly. The sound grew louder, but it was calm, controlled, not wild. The shelter workers looked at each other with surprise. Some people grew nervous. Then the engines stopped. Lena opened the door carefully. Outside, the street was lined with motorcycles. Not a few. Dozens. They were parked neatly, stretching down the block. Riders stood beside their bikes, helmets off, faces calm. They were not shouting. They were not causing trouble. They were waiting. Ray stepped forward. Lena's breath caught. He looked stronger now. His color was better. His posture was steady. He smiled when he saw her. "Hey," he said. "What are you doing here?" Lena asked quietly. Ray glanced back at the group. "We came to check on you," he said. "And to do something we talked about." Sam walked up beside Ray. "Is this a good time?" he asked. Lena looked behind her at the shelter. She looked at the people inside watching from the windows. She looked back at the bikes lined up like a wall of metal and patience. "I think so," she said. Sam nodded. He turned toward the riders and raised his hand. That single motion brought silence. "We're here for one reason," Sam said clearly. "This woman helped one of ours when she had nothing. We don't forget that. Today, we return that kindness." The riders moved into action. Some unloaded boxes from the back of trucks that Lena had not noticed before. Others carried bags inside the shelter. Food. Blankets. Supplies. New clothes. Everything was organized. No pushing. No noise. Just work. Lena stood frozen for a moment. She did not know what to do. Nora stepped beside her and whispered, "Looks like you brought angels on wheels." Lena let out a shaky breath. Her eyes filled, but she held herself together. Ray walked with Lena as she watched the riders move. "We heard the shelter could use help," he said. "So we brought some." "You didn't have to do all this," Lena said. Ray smiled. "Neither did you." Inside the shelter, the mood changed. People smiled. Some laughed. Some cried quietly. A young man received a new coat and hugged it to his chest. An older woman sat down with a warm meal and closed her eyes. The room filled with warmth, not just from food, but from being remembered. Sam walked over to Lena again. "There's more," he said. He handed her a folder. Lena opened it slowly. Inside were papers. Information about a small apartment above a repair shop owned by friends of the group. Temporary work cleaning offices. A phone number for a counselor who helped people get back on their feet. "This isn't charity," Sam said. "This is a start. You choose what you want." Lena's hands trembled as she held the folder. No one had ever given her choices like this before. Help usually came with pressure or judgment. This felt different. Ray watched her carefully. "You don't owe us anything," he said. "You already paid with kindness." Lena nodded. Words felt too small. She closed the folder and held it to her chest. Later that day, the riders gathered outside again. Before leaving, one by one, they shook Lena's hand. Some simply nodded. Some smiled. None of them treated her like she was less. When the engine started and the bikes rolled away, the street felt empty again. But Lena did not feel alone. That night, Lena sat on her bed at the shelter and opened the folder again. She read every page slowly. She imagined herself in a small room with a door that locked. She imagined waking up with a purpose. She imagined a future that did not feel fragile. For the first time in a long while, Lena allowed herself to believe she could step forward. And she did not know yet that this was only the beginning. The next week felt different for Lena. Each morning, she woke up with a small plan. It was not a big plan, but it was hers. She helped at the shelter early, then walked to the repair shop listed in the folder Sam had given her. The building was old, with peeling paint and a metal staircase that creaked under her feet. Above the shop was a small apartment with one window and a narrow door. The owner was a quiet man named Mark. He listened as Lena spoke. She did not hide her past. She told him she had been living on the street and that she was trying to start again. Mark nodded and did not interrupt. When she finished, he said something simple that stayed with her. "Everyone starts again at some point," he said. The apartment was small, but it was clean. It had a bed, a table, a chair, and a sink. The bathroom was down the hall, shared with one other person. To Lena, it felt like a palace. She ran her hand along the wall like she was touching something fragile. A place where she could lock the door. A place where she could breathe. Mark told her she could move in the next day. No pressure. No rush. Lena thanked him so many times that he smiled and waved it off. That evening, Lena packed her few things at the shelter. Nora helped her fold clothes and placed extra socks into her bag. Paul gave her a small notebook and a pen. "Write things down," he said. "Plans. Thoughts. Anything." Lena hugged them both before leaving. It felt strange to say goodbye to a place that had kept her safe. But it also felt right to move forward. The next morning, Lena unlocked her new door for the first time. The sound of the lock clicking shut behind her made her chest tighten. She leaned against the door and closed her eyes. She was inside. She was safe. She spent the day cleaning, even though the place was already clean. She wiped the table, swept the floor, and opened the window to let fresh air in. When the sun moved across the wall, she followed it with her eyes like it was showing her time moving forward. Later that afternoon, Ray called. Lena stared at the phone for a long moment before answering. "Hello," she said softly. "How does it feel?" Ray asked. "I have a door," Lena replied. "That locks." Ray laughed quietly. "I'm glad." Ray told her the group was in town again. Not to make noise. Just passing through. He asked if she wanted to have coffee. Lena hesitated, then said yes. They met at a small cafe near the repair shop. Ray arrived alone, without his bike. He wore a simple jacket and jeans. He looked like a regular man sitting at a table, holding a warm cup. They talked about small things. About the shelter. About the shop. About the weather. Ray listened more than he spoke. Lena noticed that. "You didn't save my life that day," Ray said after a while. "But you changed it." Lena shook her head. "I just shared food." Ray looked at her seriously. "You reminded me that strength is not about how loud you are. It's about what you give when it costs you something." Those words stayed with Lena as they parted. Over the next weeks, Lena started working cleaning offices in the early mornings. The work was tiring, but honest. She earned her own money again. She bought groceries. She cooked simple meals. She learned how quiet nights could be when you were not listening for danger. Some nights were still hard. Fear did not disappear overnight. She woke up sometimes thinking she was back on the street. But then she touched the wall and remembered where she was. One evening, there was a knock on her door. Lena froze. Her heart raced. Slowly, she walked to the door and looked through the small opening. Ray stood there. Sam stood beside him. And behind them, lining the street, were motorcycles. Many of them. They were parked neatly. Engines off. Riders standing quietly. Lena opened the door. Sam spoke first. "We heard this was your first place," he said. "We wanted to do something." Ray handed her a small box. Inside was a simple lamp. "Every home needs light," Ray said. Another rider stepped forward and placed a welcome mat in front of her door. Another tightened a loose railing on the stairs. Another fixed a flickering light in the hallway. No one rushed. No one made a show of it. Neighbors watched from their windows. At first, with worry. Then with curiosity. Then with calm. Lena stood there, overwhelmed. She felt tears gather, but she did not hide them. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Sam shook his head. "You already did." When the work was done, the riders nodded to her one by one. Ray stayed last. "You're doing good," he said. Lena nodded. "I'm trying." As the motorcycles left, the street returned to quiet. Lena stepped back inside and turned on the new lamp. Warm light filled the room. She sat on the bed and opened the notebook Paul had given her. She wrote one sentence. "I am building something." And for the first time, Lena believed it. Months passed, and Lena's life slowly took shape. Days had rhythm now. She woke early, made simple breakfast, and walked to work while the street was still quiet. The offices smelled of cleaner and fresh air. At first, people barely noticed her. Then they started saying good morning. Small words, but they mattered. Lena saved a little money each week. She learned how to plan again. She learned which days the market had cheaper vegetables. She learned that she liked cooking soup and bread on Sundays. In the evenings, she read borrowed books and wrote in her notebook. She wrote about fear when it showed up. She wrote about hope when it surprised her. Writing helped her keep the past in its place. One afternoon, Nora from the shelter visited. They sat at Lena's small table and drank tea. Nora smiled as she looked around. "You did this," she said. Lena shook her head. "I had help." Nora nodded. "Everyone does." The shelter continued to receive supplies now and then. Quiet help. No noise. Lena volunteered there on weekends. She spoke to new arrivals with patience. She did not promise miracles. She offered understanding. Sometimes that was enough to help someone take the next step. Ray called every few weeks. Sometimes they met for coffee. Sometimes they just talked for a few minutes. He never pushed. He never asked for anything. He listened. Sam checked in too, always respectful. The group kept their distance unless needed. That mattered to Lena. One day, Mark offered Lena more hours at work. "You're reliable," he said. "People trust you." The word trust felt heavy and warm at the same time. Lena accepted the hours. She felt stronger carrying responsibility again. As summer turned into cooler days, Lena noticed changes in herself. She stood straighter. She looked people in the eye. She spoke with steadiness. The street that once felt like a threat now felt like a place she belonged to. Then one evening, there was another knock at her door. Lena opened it to find Sam standing there alone. No bikes this time. He held a small envelope. "May I come in?" he asked. Lena nodded and invited him inside. Sam looked around and smiled. "You've made this place your own," he said. Sam handed her the envelope. Inside was a letter and a small key. "There's a program we support," Sam explained. "Training. Certification. It opens doors to better work. If you want it, it's yours." Lena held the key. Her hands shook, but not from fear. From choice. "I don't know if I'm ready," she said. Sam nodded. "You don't have to decide today." After Sam left, Lena sat on her bed and thought for a long time. She remembered the bus stop. The cold. The $8. She remembered Ray sitting on the curb. She remembered the sound of engines and the warmth of food. She realized something important. That day had not changed her because of who Ray was. It changed her because of who she chose to be. The next morning, Lena went to the shelter early. She helped serve breakfast. She talked with a young woman who looked scared and tired. Lena listened without interrupting. When the woman finished speaking, Lena said, "You matter. Today can be different." The woman nodded and cried quietly. Later that day, Lena went to the repair shop and gave Mark notice for one morning a week. "I'm starting training," she said. Mark smiled. Good. Weeks passed again. Lena attended classes in the evenings. It was hard at first. She felt behind. She asked questions anyway. She studied at her small table under the lamp Ray had given her. She passed tests one by one. On the day she completed the program, Lena walked home with a certificate in her bag. The sky was soft with evening light. She stopped at the bus stop where everything had begun. She sat on the bench and watched the city move. She felt gratitude without heaviness. She felt pride without fear. That night, engines sounded again in the distance. Lena smiled before she even looked. The bikes lined the street, calm and orderly. Ray walked up with Sam and a few others. No speeches. No crowd. "We heard the news," Ray said. "We're proud of you." Lena laughed softly. "I did the work." Ray nodded. "You did." They stood together for a moment, watching the street. Then the riders left quietly, like they always did. Lena returned to her apartment and closed the door. She turned on the lamp and opened her notebook. She wrote one last sentence on the page. Kindness started this. Courage carried it forward. Lena closed the notebook and rested her hands on the table. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, there was peace. Her story did not end with engines or noise. It ended with choice, steady steps, and a door that stayed open to tomorrow.